Good evening. It's always a pleasure to be back with you. I have Pastor Alonzo Garcia from New Life Church of God, and we have a great discussion for you tonight. It's a short but sweet verse, 1 John chapter 5 and verse 21, and it says this. It says, "Little children, keep yourselves from idols." Amen. And tonight we're going to be talking about Donald Trump and Christian idolatry. And, I don't really know how many more of these kind of political type videos that we're going to make, but I feel like this is an important one for us to talk about, and to talk about specifically how the evangelical church, a majority of the evangelical church, in my opinion, it seems as if they have made Donald Trump an icon, as if Donald Trump has somehow become a form of idolatry for at least the Western evangelical church. Idolatry is when you worship something other than God. It's an excessive devotion, or an irrational devotion, or a irrational reverence for some person or something. And it's evangelicals, in my opinion, who have deified and almost even immortalized Donald J. Trump. In other words, Trump is not really to blame for this strange phenomenon, but yet, even though with his narcissism and his Machiavellian tendencies, he certainly can exploit it. He certainly can use it to his advantage. And if you don't think he's a narcissist, fine. If you don't think he's Machiavellian, fine. But you cannot deny that he is a politician, and politicians will do whatever it takes. They'll say whatever it takes. They'll work any angle that they can in order to get the vote and to keep their place, to keep the spotlight on them. So I feel that evangelicals have done this, that they've deified him, they've immortalized him. And this it has become a strange phenomenon that surrounds Donald Trump. And Pastor Alonzo, can you help me? Can you attempt to define this Trump phenomenon that we see predominantly with Western evangelicals?
So, yeah, what a topic. As you were outlining the introduction, I was reminded of a phrase. I wasn't raised as a Christian. I was reminded of the phrase silent majority.
Okay.
And, the cultural use of the silent majority in, the 80s, maybe early 90s when I was a kid. Again, I wasn't raised in church. The silent majority was always like these Christians or, religious people that, voted. They were quiet about what they did, but they voted strongly and in force. Mm-hmm. And I think the majority, that silent majority, isn't silent anymore. And so I think two things really have happened. Well, this topic certainly is about Donald Trump. I think that in general, the evangelical church has lost its way when it comes to human beings. And I would say that they have just as much vilified one side as they have deified another side.
Oh, good.
And so I think, and again, I don't want to stray from the topic, but I think that to speak of one without the other gives an incomplete picture. And what I mean by that is this. All politicians are out for winning the election, and I think you described it perfectly. They will exploit, use any angle. Like you hear people, we talk about logical fallacies, you and I. Mm-hmm. We talk about the different things that people say, and so and the mistakes that people make engaging in logical fallacies. And so, there's false cause, like something is to blame for something even though it really isn't. There's red herring, right? So it's like, hey, look at this over here. It has nothing to do with the topic. And so we see statements come out from campaigns, and this is both sides. Nobody's innocent here.
Yeah.
Both sides, they say things, like, well, we're in favor of blah, instead of the other party who would rather, eat your grandmother's cookies without asking, right? And so, like, they throw out these logical fallacies, the things that are not connected, but it's an effort to promote superiority. And I think that the problem with the church and the problem with this topic is that there is an air of superiority that is being expressed by the Western evangelical church, and superiority is the opposite of humility. And so whether that's bagging on one party because they're the devil to you, or lifting up this other party because they are, people sent from God to you, I think it's that superiority is the problem. And both sides, both the left and the right, insist that their way is superior. And I think it's the superiority aspect that is ruining the cultural framework of our democratic process. There's no tyranny in a democratic process because people get to vote. You may not like the outcome, but it doesn't mean that it's tyrannical.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I saw it today when I was working on the job site. I saw the MAGA hat, right? The Make America Great Again. I saw the MAGA hat. Make America Great Again.
That is superiority.
Yes, and Make America Great Again is in a sense creating a utopia for people just like me. Creating a utopia for people just like us. Make America Great Again, creating a utopia for God-fearing Christians and God-fearing Christians alone. Make America Great Again is pushing our agenda and the hell with everyone else's agenda. You know, Pastor, the last time as I looked and thought about the last 40 or 50 years here in the United States of America, I really had to wonder, what was so great about it at times, because you remember the Summer of Love in 1967, the acid, the drug use, the sexual revolution, the Manson murders, Altamont. In the 1970s, the rise of the serial killers, drugs, base immorality. You have Son of Sam. You have the Zodiac killer begins to surface in the California area. In the 1980s, you had the Reagan's assassination, and Brady and Hinckley, and the crack epidemic, predominantly in, some would say it was chemical warfare that was unleashed into black communities. And then the 1990s, people like me and you, Generation X, Ruby Ridge, Waco, Jeffrey Dahmer, Rodney King, LAPD, Melendez brothers, Waco again, and even in the 2000s, where we live now and today, the World Trade Center, Iraq, the recession, COVID, bind and torture killer, BTK, Oxycontin, fentanyl crisis, George Floyd, and let's not forget the last election that many people thought was fixed and fraudulent. And that's why a lot of people who may have voted for Donald Trump the last go around, they won't vote in this election because they felt it was fixed. They felt they were duped. So yeah, America is great, but you can't just take that statement and say, let's make America great again, because the last time I looked, there was some pretty ugly and pretty terrible things that happen not only all over the world, not only in every country, but we have to be honest about America. And we talked about some of these things, the American dream, and not everybody gets to partake of the American dream. Not everybody gets, their wishes don't come true, and it doesn't matter who the candidate is. It doesn't matter what party they align themselves with is. Sometimes you just get cut off at the knees, and you pray and you hope that you don't wish that on anybody. But the last time I looked, things didn't look that great if you look at America's track history. But I think that when you just take something like Make America Great Again, you put it on a hat, you put it on a sticker, you put it on your car, and I think that people, are they willfully blind of how great it really is? Or how great it really was?
Yeah, I think it's like anything else, right? Madison Avenue, New York, that's the, when I was a kid, that was the advertising capital of America. And so, if you had somebody that, needed, a product sold, they would contact, someone in the Madison Avenue, field, right? And this avenue in New York were different ad agencies. I was listening to a song the other day by a band from the 90s that, talked about the eroticization of our children, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the problems that we have are because that's what we wanted to hear. That's what we wanted to get sold. And so we pretend sometimes that the days of yesteryear are better than the days that we're currently in. But when we do that, we entirely miss the opportunity to make today better than it ever was and make this moment the best that it possibly could be. And so when you have phrases like "Make America Great Again," it's an advertising slogan. It's a campaign that is trying to get people to look at something differently, and as they say, time heals all wounds, to look back on those times of hurt and imagine that they weren't really as bad as they were. As you were going down that list, I don't. Of course, I wasn't old enough for the Summer of Love, right? And
No,
and if you did it right, you wouldn't remember it, right?
We weren't. But look at Generation X.
Yeah. So
we grew up in that.
I get confused with what Generation X is.
Well, Generation X is it's the years that we were in our youth, in our prime.
Okay.
90s.
Why did they start with X?
Well, I'm not sure exactly, but so when
I mean, how do you go from the greatest generation to baby boomers to Generation X? The math doesn't calculate for me.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's another topic.
But this is something that we have to look at, because yes, America's great, but there was a lot of things that were ugly and dark and black and
Vietnam.
Terrible that happened. Yeah, I didn't even put. Obviously.
Korea, Vietnam.
All the conflicts, right? And people are like, no, I don't want to think about those things. I don't want to look at those things, because I just want to pretend, and I want my apple pie, and I want my American flag, and I want my Bible, and I want my peace, and I want to die in my little warm little bed, and I want everything to be perfect for me. No, that's not reality. And people say, well, why in the world would you want to think about something like Dahmer? Why in the world would you want to think about Rodney King? Why in the world would you want to think about Reagan's assassination? Why in the world would you want to think about maybe an election that was fixed? Because you know what? You have to learn from those things, and you have to revisit those things. You don't have to stay there. You don't have to pitch your tent and stay there for weeks and months and months and months. But sometimes you have to look back in the pages of history. Sometimes you have to rewind and look at things and say, oh, you know what? That happened 20 years ago. That happened 3 years ago. It can happen again. What can I learn from it? And we have to see ourselves as the perpetrator in these awful tragedies that have happened here on American soil. Now, America is great, but at the same time, Donald Trump is presenting himself as one who can solve all of America's problems. And I think that evangelicals have taken the bait.
Yeah, I mean, there's no politics of today. I grew up in a house. I don't have the degree. My dad had a political science degree, and so I sat, and listened to rather deep and intense conversations about the American political process.
Now, well, you were fortunate, because most don't.
Yeah, and I took civics. Civics doesn't exist as a class anymore. A ninth grade government class. My dad was a civics teacher, so I learned about how bills become law, how veto powers work, how the separation of powers work. Different things that were really, really important to grasp, like that the mayor is the executive for that city, the county manager is the executive for a county, if that's the term that you use, the governor is the executive for the state, the president is the executive for the country, but each of those has their own abilities, and the power that they have is delineated because they are under authority because of the separation clause in the Constitution. And so I learned about life in a world where people debated ideas. I now live in a world where people present straw man arguments, right? The straw man argument, another logical fallacy, is your idea is bad because you're terrible. Right? It has nothing to do with the idea, but it has everything to do with who it comes from. And so, this world of logical fallacies that we live in, it drives me insane, because we have fully functional, intelligent people who, just like the Bible, they don't understand literary devices. In life, they don't understand these logical challenges, and they're not good at navigating the logical challenge. And so you end up, as you say, taking the bait, and you make one side the best thing that could ever be and the other side the worst thing that could ever be. And it doesn't matter whether you're on the left or the right. That's people's perspective. It's like at the end of Animal Farm. It's hard to tell the difference between Napoleon and the humans.
Yeah,
right?
Jones. Yeah. Remember, they're playing cards.
They're all playing cards,
and the donkey looks through the window, right? And I think Napoleon cheated. Napoleon had an ace.
Of course he did.
Yeah, and he played an ace, but and so they knew that he cheated, and the faces. He can't tell them apart anymore.
Can't tell them apart.
Yeah. And the political stuff, with the Republican and the Democratic Party, there's people that I've known for like 20, 30 years, and like, it depends. If you're like on the wrong side of that coin, if you're like on the wrong side of that slice of American apple pie, because whether you're Republican or Democrat, it's all, it's really the same American pie.
It's superiority.
Yeah, but whatever. It's just, do you have cheese on your apple pie or do you not have cheese on your? So whatever side you're on, and like if you're on the wrong side, like they won't even want to be your friends anymore. Like they won't even talk to you anymore. They will isolate you. They will shun you. They will say, like some people do it sometimes, you're dead to me. I don't even know you anymore. I don't even want anything to do with you.
Yep.
And like when did that happen?
I don't know. Harry Truman said...
It's true, though.
Absolutely, it's true. Absolutely, it's true.
And there's evangelicals that will do that, and they'll say, "Oh, you're not for Trump. Well, then, you must be, you must be satanic, or you must be Luciferian because, you're not, you're not nosotros. You're not with us."
Yep.
And it's like, what the hell is that?
It's a great question. Harry Truman is famous for this quote. He said, "It's amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit."
Yeah.
And so
that's wisdom.
It is. And so we live in a world where everyone is so focused on making sure they get the credit, but getting the credit is always at the expense of someone else. Now, the other side of the pendulum is everyone gets a participation trophy. Like it's so ingrained into our culture now that one of those two things is the ultimate. Either there is the clear champion and no one else comes close, the gold medal winner, or everyone is equal and everyone's the same and everyone gets the same kind of thing. At some point in time, sure, everyone should get a participation gift, but there should always be a champion that's acknowledged. And the challenge is no one wants to invite someone and say, "Come with me, let's share ideas." I love bipartisanship because one side does not have all the answers. The liberal or the conservative, you have to wonder what they're trying to conserve, right? That's where that Make America Great comes in. Like, what are you trying to conserve? And the liberal, like, what are they being free with? Like, what are they giving away too much of? Right? And so between these two exists the American political dynamic. And that's the challenge that we face because independent parties don't get the same approach, right? There's just not enough support because it's polarized. We're so polarized one to another. And that is what creates idolatry. Because I'll say this, that just as much as Trump worship creates idolatry, Biden and Harris, Walls, whatever, hate is also idolatry. You make the devil an idol as well. Like, it's not always like, oh, this is the savior. Like, you make an idol out of the villain. And when you do that, you destroy the opportunity for people to come together under the covering of let's dialogue and come up with a good solution. It is amazing what you can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit.
Yeah. Now, to be fair, Trump, Donald Trump had a lot of wonderful accomplishments in his 4 years being president. Because I don't want people to think that we're trying to villainize Donald Trump. I don't want people to think that we hate him, because we don't. But we're simply looking at these things because they are important. And America gained 7 million new jobs, right, under Donald Trump. Unemployment rates for Black and Hispanic and Asian Americans, Native American veterans, individuals with disability, those without a high school diploma, all reached record lows. Unemployment for women hit its lowest rate in 70 years. He brought jobs, factories, and industries back to the United States. He hit record stock market numbers, right? Rebuilding and investing in rural America. He achieved a record-setting economic comeback by rejecting, these blanket lockdowns. He passed $3.2 trillion in historic tax relief and reformed the tax code and jobs and so many things, so many great things that he did. But I really what's hit me is making an idol out of the devil.
Yep.
Right, and that's what people have done, and there is that polarization. It's like you're on this side, I'm on this side, and we can't meet in the middle. We can't have a conversation. We can't exchange ideas because you have betrayed us. You are a traitor.
Yep.
You are against us, and therefore we can have nothing to do with you.
That's how we ended up with January 6th, right? Like, people can call it whatever they want. Like, my job isn't to police what people call it, but there were dialogue about a new American revolution. For what? Like, where is the tyranny? Like, who is this villain that people are so desperately after? Like, the arguments about draining the swamp, all of those politicians are the swamp. Like, they're all the swamp. They're all the swamp.
Okay, now, Pastor Alonso, is it fair to say that evangelicals, in a sense, metaphorically, is it fair to say that evangelicals have replaced God, at least metaphorically, with Donald J. Trump?
I think some people have.
Okay.
And I don't know that all of them have. Like, I would consider myself evangelical, right? I would consider that I'm in that group. We had the liberty of elections. I voted for him twice. I don't know what I'm going to do this year.
Yeah, so did I. I did too.
And like, I don't regret voting for him twice, but I really turned a corner with stuff that surrounded January 6th and the dialogue that has destroyed our faith and credibility in the American electoral process, because that's damage you really can't undo. And you shouldn't say those things. And like, there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud. And for all the complaining about absentee ballots, he voted early in Florida. And I'm like, I don't get it. So I think that some evangelicals have replaced the devil with Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. I think some evangelicals have replaced God with Donald Trump. But I think, in all fairness, I think it's born from something that isn't necessarily wicked. I think it's born from the desire to see the world shaped as we see in some of the things that we pray, right? Like in Matthew, right? The Lord's Prayer, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And I think there is, behind some of these evangelicals that are looking at Trump, whether and a second administration that would have started in 2020 or a second administration that would start in 2025, 2024, elected, started January 6th of 2025. It's always January 6th. I think there is a desire to see things be godly.
Yeah, because like this, therefore, when they had come together, they asked him, saying, Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom to Israel, Acts chapter 1, right?
Yep.
They asked Jesus, and all throughout Jesus's ministry,
That's
right?
all
They were
wanted.
always thinking that, like, okay, he's here, he's going to take over, he's going to rule, he's
Yep.
going to break the oppression,
Yep.
he's going to give us exactly what we want, he's going to give us paradise,
Yep.
and Christ did not do that in the way that they thought he was going to do it.
That's right.
And I think that a lot of that has, as you said, not insidiously, but it has
It's not
crept.
insidious.
It has crept into the minds, and it has crept into the thought patterns of good people that love God and go to church. But like, I think there's a real desire for them to say, now's going to be the time when we're going to turn a corner. Now's going to be a time when when we can rid the world of evil, and now will be a time when we can have things the way that we want it. And Christ would tell Pilate, right? He said,
Yeah.
"This is not the way my kingdom is. The way that your kingdom is with Rome, my kingdom is different.
Yep.
It's not going to be like that. It's not what you think it is." And I think there's a lot of that's taking place too.
I would agree, and I would say that a lot of that has been fueled by the Western evangelical church's eschatology. Like, we have an obsession with the end times.
Yeah, dispensation, rapture
We're
of
just-
the church.
We're obsessed with it. And so we have, like, the phrase, we're in the last days. And for how many years, right, have people said, we're in the
Hundreds
last
and
days of the
hundreds.
last
I heard
days
it
of
the
the
other
last
day.
days of the last days?
Yeah.
I'm just keep adding last days because it's not going to be on your calendar. It's not on your timetable. And so the idea of wanting to see things restored to what they should be runs in the face of people having the freedom to be how they want to be. And I can't force other people to live the way that I live. It is said that Benjamin Franklin, upon exiting one of the constitutional conventions, someone asked him. They said, a lady asked him. She said, "Do we have a democracy or a republic?" And he says, "A republic, if you can keep it." And so we don't know what those words mean, right? A republic and a democracy are two radically different things. We are in a democratic republic. It has nothing to do with the Democratic Party, and it has nothing to do with the Republican Party. In fact, it has to do with the ideas behind how those parties got their name. A democratic rule is where everybody votes on everything, and the most people who vote for a thing or against a thing, that thing comes to pass or that thing is stopped. A republic is where we elect people to vote on those things for us. And we have a democratic republic. And I run into a lot of constitutionalists, and I want to be kind. I don't want to sound insulting in any way. Most of these folks have not really read the Constitution. They're just like, the Constitution is fine the way it was. And then you ask them about, well, as far as representation goes, in the slave states, the black person was considered 3/5 of a person. And they said, do you know what changed that? And they're like, no, an amendment. They're like, well, I got to have my Second Amendment rights. And I'm like, sure. It's an amendment, meaning the Constitution wasn't fine the way they wrote it. They had to amend it because they missed things when they first wrote it. They're like, oh, you know what? You're right. We need to address that. So we have the 10 amendments that we consider the Bill of Rights, but we don't think about how they ended up being a Bill of Rights. They are a Bill of Rights because the document, the governing document, was incomplete. And so it had to be fixed. And so slavery, right, was permitted to continue. There are those who say, well, it's a matter of states' rights. Slavery, the Civil War was fought about states' rights. And I used to believe that.
Yeah, I hear that. I've heard that a lot.
And so that's the 10th Amendment, right? It says that anything that's not hereby, described or delineated or, mentioned in any way becomes a right of the state. But it wasn't about state rights. It was about labor is cheap. And like, I've been doing it, it's the normal thing for me, and now you want to mess up my life. I want to keep America great. I want to keep people enslaved. And other people saying, let's make America great. People shouldn't own each other. Like, human beings are human beings. They should be able to run on the beach, or, drink from the same water fountain, sit in the same restaurant, not have to sit in the back of the bus.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the reason that we've ended up with like these civil rights challenges that have sat under people's skins for generations and annoyed and irritated people is because the document is not complete. It's always in the process of being revitalized. Like, the idea of women not being able to vote to us today is ludicrous, but there was a time they couldn't vote.
Yeah, it's always changing.
It's always
refining.
changing. And it's changing sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse.
Yeah.
Prohibition repealed. It takes a constitutional amendment to do it.
Yeah, that's great that you're explaining some of these things, because there's so many people, myself included. When I went back to school, I took American government and I got like a D+. And I remember my friend Michael Smith. He was helping me, and because I'm a Neanderthal with technology. I'm a total idiot, and I was doing online courses, and it was terrible for me. It was very difficult for me, but I did well, and as well as I could. And I remember he would look at my grade point average, and I remember he looked at that and he goes, "You got a D in government?" Yeah. And I was like, I don't. So, but to be fair, like, it's not as easy and cut and dry as everybody tries to make it. Like, oh, I know about it. It's like, no, you don't, man. It's pretty difficult. It's pretty in depth. It's and I fear that we've lost sight of that with the generations that are being brought up. I don't really know how much they really understand about American government, because it's very important to know how those things work. Now let's look at these examples for a few minutes, because I want to get into, at the end, I want to get into this the statement that Donald Trump made several weeks back. But let's this is kind of interesting. Let's talk for a minute about Trumpy Bear. You remember the Trumpy Bear?
In England?
The Trumpy Bear. It was a plushy Donald Trump teddy bear that was made to look like Donald. It was made to look like Donald Trump.
Yeah,
and so and it's kind of comical. It's kind of funny. Donald Trump teddy bear, the pompadour hairdo, the thumbs up, the American flag is a blanket, and to me it is a bizarre type of idolatry for
there's
some
weird stuff out there.
So why does owning a Trumpy bear seem so bizarre and strange?
We make fun of people who practice voodoo.
Okay.
And is there really a difference?
Because I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested, because like I don't have, I don't have an answer to that. But like, so
people will just buy stuff. It's marketing.
You can't take it too seriously.
You can't. So,
but what does it say though about? I mean, because I remember, like, I literally remember, like, I'm not lying, I'm not making this up. I literally remember watching television, and that commercial came on for it, and they're like, "I've got my Trumpy bear, and I take him with me everywhere I go." And I thought, like, wow, something has changed. Something has really shifted here. And to me, that it is a bizarre type of idolatry.
So I'm in that case, I don't really watch TV.
So you mentioned a voodoo doll.
Yeah, and so there's voodoo is in, like, I want to hurt you, and there's voodoo that I want to help you.
All right.
Right? And in the Screw Tape Letter, C.S. Lewis, right? Clive Stapleton Lewis, we consider him a preeminent Christian storyteller. In the Screw Tape Letters, he talks about, to his nephew Wormwood, he says, let the patient pray whatever he wants, but when he prays, encourage him to look at the corner of the housetop, or at an image on the wall, because God is not there, and let him focus his attention. Well, he says the enemy, because the enemy is not there, as if him praying would make him feel good, but does absolutely nothing. Right?
That's I remember that. I've read that. Yeah,
it's a great book. And when you kind of step back and you read passages like, when you pray, don't use a bunch of empty words like the Gentiles do, but pray in this manner. There are people who would, probably not realizing that they're making altars to these things, They make altars to them. It's the same thing that happens with money. It's the same thing that happens with
any form of idolatry,
any
right?
form of idolatry, anything. It's just, in this case, you can point to it and say it's a product made by, and you know the dumbest thing about it? Probably
It's
made in
not
China.
made in America.
Which is,
yeah.
to my NRA friends, I'm like, look at the label inside your gift that you get for signing up. It's not made in America. If you say that China hates us, why do you support their economy?
Yeah.
I don't support their economy. I don't shop at Walmart. Like, it's not where I go.
Yeah, I go there.
I don't go there.
Yeah.
I don't have anything.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the Donald Trump rapture picture, because now we are getting more into
AI.
We are getting more into you know. So
wow.
it's an image of Donald Trump
From the Boston Globe?
Yeah, his mouth is open. It's geared towards The Apprentice, but nevertheless, he has a halo, and he has all these people that are somehow rising up into his mouth, right? So if evangelicals have Trump, then Jesus doesn't need to come back and spoil their golden era or return to the Garden of Eden, right? Somehow Donald Trump has become a divine sign that the rapture of the church is once again finally drawing nigh. Well, if it's finally drawing nigh, and if you follow that train of thought, if you follow that, if you look at the doom and gloom, if you look at the hail, fire, and brimstone, like, why would things get better?
Right.
For 4 years or 8 years, so I don't. It seems to me that there's these images don't make sense.
No.
But these images are very telling, because they say something about our culture. They say something about the church. They say something about our society. And we can learn a lot of things from looking at these images. And sometimes they're hard to look at. Sometimes we don't want to look at them. Sometimes we refuse to look at them. But when you look at them, they show you a glaring example of what is on the minds and hearts of people. That's why people like them. That's why they make sense. That's why people laugh. That's why people appreciate them, because there is an element of truth in them. What do you think about this these rapture pictures of Trump? Is Trump, has he awakened something within the hearts and lives of evangelicals that Christ is coming again?
Yeah, I think there's, and I was going to look for it. I didn't think about getting it ready. So, Noam Chomsky has a book, has a quote where it says that, understanding history isn't memorizing that the Nazis killed 6 million Jews. Learning history is understanding how everyone else thought that was okay.
Yes.
And so we're kind of in a very similar place. Please hear me. I am not equating one to the other. It's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is that we're in a similar place, that we're willing to give a pass on whatever kind of bad behavior because a government agent, or in this case a former government agent, president, says it's okay to do these things. And so it's wrapped up in our eschatology, right? It goes back to, all these paper handbills, revival services, end times prophecy, everybody wanting to be part of it. See, our problem is we insist on stealing someone else's experience. Like if you go to Matthew 24, right? This is one of those passages that, people point to that you quoted from.
There's Matthew 24 preachers where that's all they preach.
That's all they preach. And so, he begins to outline, these things that are going to happen in those end times, and he says
that you claim they've already happened.
Well, the things here,
they've happened already. Yeah.
They did, but we want to steal it. It's cultural appropriation. He's talking to Jewish believers. He hadn't died and resurrected. They weren't believing in the risen Christ.
Yes.
Like that is a key.
Yeah, Calvary was not a
distinction.
reality. The resurrection was not a reality.
That's right. So, he says when these things come, you're going to see nation against nation. This is what they cry out, right? They're like, nation will rise against nation. There's just battles here and battles there, kingdom against kingdom, the famines and earthquakes in various places. These are all the beginnings of the birth pangs. And then they say they will deliver you up to tribulation and put you to death. In America, nobody's being put to death for being a believer. Like that's
no, we
that's
don't.
not
We
happening,
don't. No.
right? And then verse 12, and because of lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold, but the one who endures to the end will be saved. And so we have to start like challenging what is this that it means to be a person who endures to the end. And then he talks about the abomination of desolation. We have the parentheses, let the reader understand, right? Those who in Judea flee to the mountains. We're not in Judea, but this happened in AD 70, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let the one who's on the housetop not go down and take his house, because it happened in AD 70. I mean, like 2 armies marched.
The world ended for the
them.
Jews.
It did,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then it says, these things will happen before this generation passes away. And we completely and totally ignore that, because we don't want that generation to be the one that it happens in. We want it to be us, because if I'm not the witness to it, then it doesn't happen. If I'm not included in the Bible, if I don't get to be, Peter when he's doing the right thing, if I don't get to be James and John, the Boanerges, the sons of thunder speaking, if I don't get to be, right, all the righteous things that the Bible says, then certainly I would never be any of those other things. But that's all we are. We are Haman. Right? It's this Disney princess theology that we think somehow we have to be involved, that nothing will happen until America is involved in the end of the world. And that, to me, is why we have the challenges that we have, why people say things like, don't preach politics from the pulpit. You shouldn't preach politics from the pulpit. Let people make their own decisions. They have the Bible. But people keep bringing the pulpit to politics.
Yeah.
People keep bringing these things exactly as you described, like this picture of this rapture. And like I've seen all kinds of AI generated images, and we just flock, a lot of people, not everyone.
Yeah.
Lots of people flock to those. And they have their critics, and those that criticize them for a variety of reasons. But like people are being hoodwinked, and they know that they should know they're being hoodwinked.
Yeah.
But they don't.
Let's talk about this one. The Donald Trump revival, the tent revival picture with
I hadn't seen that.
with Donald Trump at the old-fashioned tent revival.
Does he have the Bible upside down?
Well, I'm not sure, but I'm sure that's the photograph that when he took the oath. The Trump tent revival poster. This imagery is ironic because old-fashioned tent revivals appeal to fundamentalists.
Absolutely.
And old-fashioned tent revivals is a type of old bottle theology, if you ask me, and old bottle tactics, fire and brimstone condemnation. So people love these, but this, I'm sure that, I'm not positive, but that image was probably not generated by a Christian. It was probably somebody that despises those in Christianity.
Yeah.
So it tells us something about how our religion, our presentation of the gospel, it's old-fashioned. It doesn't seem to be working anymore. It doesn't seem to be reaching anymore. It doesn't seem to be inclusive anymore. It doesn't seem to have diversity in it anymore, because people, this is why you see this. You see the serpent on the bottle of the snake oil, right? And that's fitting as well, because obviously all politicians are considered parasitical. They're a cult of personality.
Yep.
They're deceptive. They're fraudulent. Also the serpent is at times he's seen as a demonic representation of evil. The fundamentalist snake handlers and all these kinds of things. So I thought that the Trump tent revival one was very fitting, and that one got my attention.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it, but as we talk about the difference between liberalism and conservatism, right? If that's the dialogue, what are we endeavoring to conserve?
All right.
Right, and so what you described about the desire to appeal to fundamentalism. What is fundamental? Like you have to pick a period in time and say this was the best. And as you look back in history, and I think you did a great job in how you introduced it, history is filled with the terrible and tragic mistakes of how we mistreat other people.
Yeah.
And so when you say I'm a conservative fundamentalist, I want to conserve what exactly? Jim Crow? You want to conserve segregation? Do you want to conserve free sex? The free love? I mean, in the in the 60s, like what is it that you're trying to conserve? It was a Democratic governor that turned fire hoses on kids that were endeavoring to be integrated in the South in school, and it was a Republican president who freed the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation. And at some point in time, it seems that the roles just got confused, conflated, and they just both became, as you say, parasitical on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
Right? Like I see people post things like, I have to say something because, I care about, my grandchildren and the world that they grow up in. But anybody can say that. Like whatever your political inclination is, the reason you believe what you believe is because of your grandchildren.
Yeah.
Or whatever the next generation, we want to leave them a world that's worth living in. Everybody wants to do that.
That's the best you've got.
That's it.
Yeah.
But we vilify the other side just because it's them. It's us and them, and there is no us and them. The same kid with brown skin color, right, darker than mine. You're going to look at him sideways in your neighborhood, but you're going to pray for him in Africa.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
What's the difference, bro?
And how and how people, in some cases, in some radical cases, they're saying that people from third world countries are coming to United States to evangelize America, and it's like if any nation knows the gospel and has heard the gospel time and time, the saying is America is gospel hard. So I see what you're saying. It's very hard to digest it.
We're bad with logical fallacies. We just give them a pass, and we are as a populace. I don't care if you're on the left or the right. Most folks are under the influence of superiority, and I think it's the superiority element that if you believe the way that I believe and you do things the way that I do things, then you will be better than them. I think that mindset is incredibly destructive to the fabric of our nation and our democracy.
All right, let's talk about the image of Trump portrayed on the album cover entitled Punch. This obviously, this is with Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys.
Yep.
And
Chemical warfare.
Lard. Many different side projects, and many of you know that BC, before Christianity, me and Alonzo shared a love for punk rock music, and you can learn a lot of things from looking at this in this visualization, in this piece of art, some would call it. In this visualization, Trump is a crawling infant wearing a soiled diaper. His mouth and his hands are covered with fecal matter. Yep. Trump is pulling an American flag type tablecloth off of an end table, and a globe will inevitably fall on the top of his head. Now, some people will say, well, this is awful, but we have to see the other side of the coin, so to speak, as it concerns political and religious views in order to educate ourselves, right? A failure to look into these matters is, in a sense, a denial of reality. No matter how difficult or appalling it might be, there are elements of truth in all these visualizations of Donald Trump, whether they are good or whether they are bad. So why is it so important to maybe see the other side of the coin, because there is truth in the other side of the coin, no matter what we want to say.
Right. The challenge that I have, and this is a challenge I have across the board, like I don't like people making fun of other people, right? Like in that kind of hurtful, destructive way. Like I don't think that it's appropriate to call people names. You know, if you're a politician campaigning for my vote, like it's not helpful for you to call people names, and it's not helpful for me to see others, like the desire that people have to see others humiliated. But I agree with you, like there is an incredible value in examining things from the artist's perspective. And so many things are incredibly subjective, but the image presents itself as a person who is incapable of controlling their emotions, that their outbursts produce destructive things, and sometimes they literally crap their pants and get it all over themselves. I think any parent has dealt with the chocolate fountain coming out the back of the diaper at some point in time.
Well, it's part of being parent.
Part of being the parent.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like it's presenting that this person you are following or idolizing, like, just isn't fit for that position, and the pulling on the flag just because like, ooh, it's pretty, is clearly stating that there is a lack of awareness about the danger and how ultimately what happens to the head happens to the body as well.
Yeah.
And so like while I reserve that position, I don't like to make fun of people. Like I don't mind teasing people, right? But like I don't think it's right to, because even Donald Trump's made in the image of God, just like anybody else, just like me. Like we're all made in the image of God, and I can't pretend that he isn't, because that's not biblical.
Yeah,
now,
I understand.
I can disagree with the way someone treats others biblically, but I don't know his heart. But yeah, I see something like that, and it resonates with me because, like, it's easy to make that connection as the artist has presented it. That's literally what it looks like. And
if it's Jello Biafra.
It's Jello Biafra.
So Jello Biafra has always he despised Reagan.
Yep.
He despised Margaret Thatcher,
Jerry Brown,
and Jerry Brown, and a lot of there's people that will argue this, and I'm not saying it's 100% infallible, but they will argue and say some of the greatest punk rock music in America came from the 8 years that Ronald Reagan was president.
Yep.
So it's just another side of the coin.
And then the next generation was during George W. Bush's presidency.
Bush, yes, yeah.
So there are. It's like
I don't know personally if that music was as interesting as the music that came from the Reagan administration.
So I would not incline toward the pop punk, but I think NoFX had a couple
that's
great
true.
albums
Yeah.
that really pointed that out.
Yeah, that's true. All right, now let's talk about the Donald Trump father-son poster. This is the image of Donald Trump sitting at the sacred desk, and Christ is behind him. Christ is apparently guiding Trump's pen as he's signing legislation into place or vetoing legislation that is already in place. This image is probably the most ridiculous one, since when does Christ care only for the United States of America? You are familiar with
I have not seen it.
Yeah, see, the hand is
that's
and people are,
look how strangely white Jesus looks.
And people are it's for sale, and I'm sure people are buying these things.
Look, a communist country produces things like it says on that table, whatever the centerpiece is, it says blessed. It's made in China. China's an atheistic country. Like at some point we are. A pastor that I served for many years used to say this. He'd say, "Are you wearing the cross, or is the cross wearing you?" Like, we are T-shirt Christians. We are slogan Christians. We have the God bless you. We buy stuff from Hobby Lobby. I was at Hobby Lobby the other day. They have a portrait of the Last Supper, made in China, of all places. And the answer some people
Well, it
have
wasn't
is,
on a Sunday, was it?
no, it wasn't on a Sunday.
And you didn't get Chick-fil-A on Sunday.
I didn't get Chick-fil-A.
No,
No, didn't
Man,
get Chick-fil-A.
What's it coming to?
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
You know,
so all right, sorry.
I don't really eat at Chick-fil-A. And a Hobby Lobby, it's like.
There's a bunch of old women in there.
So
Come on. Yeah.
here's the thing that drives me nuts. The store has some things always on sale. I'm like, why not just sell it for the price? Just why not just lower the price? Why does it have to be 40% off? I get the illusion of value, and that's how I buy things. But that's what people do. They get the illusion of value.
Yeah. Well, let's deconstruct as we close. Let's deconstruct Trump's appeal for evangelicals to go out and vote for him.
Okay.
He says this: Christians, get out and vote. You won't have to do it anymore. In 4 years, it'll be fixed. It'll be fine. My beautiful Christians, I love you, Christians. I'm not Christian.
He said that?
Interesting. Yes, he did. He did.
Huh.
And you can look it up, and you can, a lot of our evangelical people can look into that, but we hear what we want to hear. We don't want to, so to Trump's credit, he tells people, I love it, I love you, Christians. I'm a Christian. And it just goes in one ear and out the other. We hear, I love you, Christians, but we don't hear, I'm not Christian. I'm not saying that
I'm a Christian.
I'm not saying that he has to be Christian. That's not my argument. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with a Christian casting his or her vote. Is it a sin to not vote in the presidential election?
No. So there's this thing called,
Because people will call you a devil because if you, people, and I agree with you, but we are not in the majority on that. No.
Here's the thing. Like, to me, a vote is so precious. Like, I'm not going to use it to vote against someone. If I'm not going to vote for the person, I often don't vote that particular spot. It's called an undervote, and it's the only way that I can display my displeasure with that candidate. Because if 200 votes were cast in general, the vote total was 200 people showed up to vote, but one candidate got 70 votes and the other candidate got 70 votes, then there are 60 votes that weren't cast. And so those are 60 people, I'm just using simple 30 on each side, that are saying, I disagree, but I'm not going to waste this precious thing to vote against you because I don't agree with that either, but I don't agree with you.
Okay, yeah.
And so I think there's value in undervote.
Okay.
Now this quote, I've heard the quote, right? And I've heard people say, he said, I'm a Christian, right? And I agree with you. It's not what he said.
And you said, I'm not Christian.
And I think that as a carnival barker, a politician will say,
Barnum and Bailey,
they'll say whatever they got to say to get you to bite. Now, when I first heard the quote, I was really, really disturbed because I was like, hold on a second. Is this person saying that the elections will be fixed, that like it'll be some different kind of world, that votes don't have to be cast, that it will be a religious, not a constitutional democracy, but it'll be some sort of theocratic or religious rule, like basically like an American caliphate, right? Like a Christian caliphate, where instead of Sharia law, we're like, oh, we're going to use Moses's law. But it's the same thing. That's what people don't recognize or realize. Then I thought about it some more and read some people's thoughts on it, and I came to a different perspective. I don't believe he was saying that things will be permanently rigged, where Christianity or a Christian or conservatism or right wing, whatever, will always be in power. I realized that he actually doesn't care what happens in 4 years. He doesn't care what kind of legacy is left behind. It's about snatching 4 years and owning them. And that disturbed me even more than the idea that he was like, oh, we'll just destroy the elections. I'm like, hold on a second. So this is the de facto leader of the Republican Party, the conservative, minded. Like I said at the beginning, what I heard was the silent majority when I was a kid. I'm thinking of a Pennywise song that has to do with authority.
Yeah.
And there's the silent majority that is now super vocal, and he's literally saying, I believe, that I don't really care about you. I love you, I love you, I love you, but I don't care about you. If I get mine, or as these kids say today, mines, if I get mines, I don't care about yours. Like whatever happens to you in 4 years, good luck. Don't care. I will have checked off the box, and I will have subjugated people into believing that I am who they think I am.
All right.
And that to me it's so gross I can't even put words to it. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, and even the way that, even the delivery, he does remind me of P.T. Barnum and Bailey. There's a sucker born every minute.
They're all carnival barkers, man.
Yeah,
all of them are.
Now, is it a sin to be an evangelical and vote for a Democrat?
I think to him who knows what to do what is right and does not do it, to him it is sin. I think freedom is only freedom if it's actually free, and if we have free and fair elections. Like, I don't see anywhere in the Bible where it outlines political voting. And so I think that is a way that people threaten and intimidate other people into behaving a certain way. And anytime that you try and threaten and intimidate people into behaving a certain kind of way, you are practicing witchcraft.
Yeah, it's not godly.
It's not godly.
Yeah, no,
it's
not godly.
Literally, it's the same kind of prayer like, Lord, make this person love me. What is that? Lord, make somebody stop doing this. Lord, make somebody do this. We have free will. And so people, the vote is so precious and valuable that people have the right to spend it in whatever capacity they want. They have the freedom to make mistakes. They have the freedom to make good choices. They also have the freedom to seek God and sometimes say, I read in the Bible that Nebuchadnezzar was terrible, and then he was really good, and he wasn't a Christian, but he allowed people to serve the God that they followed, and it took him a hard lesson to learn. And so I think that God is behind anyone who is seeking to find him. And I think that's the core of Paul's message at the Areopagus, right? That God has made himself available that people might find their way toward him. And I think that anyone who ends up in those positions of power, don't shoot holes in the boat. Like, we're all in this boat together. Don't salt the water, don't salt the ground, don't shoot holes in the boat. You may not like the outcome, but it's a free and democratic process. It's not like Venezuela's elections.
Right, right. Well, we thank you for your time tonight. Thank you, Pastor Alonso.
Oh, thanks for having me.
We've been talking about Donald Trump and Christian idolatry. We look forward to talking with you again at some point here in the near future. Good night, and God bless you.